Well, supporters of the first US federal law against so-called revenge porn are now looking for a new path forward after legislation was cut from the spending deal which Congress passed on Friday. The Take It Down Act would require websites to remove reported non-consensual explicit content, including AI-generated deepfakes, within 48 hours or face federal penalties. Now, the bipartisan bill has already passed the Senate unanimously and was set to be passed into law by the House of Representatives as part of the deal hammered out on Friday to avoid a government shutdown, but it was cut from the spending package in last-minute talks. Well, joining me now is Omny Miranda Martone, CEO of the Sexual Violence Prevention Association, one of the groups backing the bill. Very good to have you with us once again here on BBC News. So as we were just outlining, none of the bills addressing sexual or digital violence ended up being included in that government spending bill. Just firstly, your reaction to that?
Yeah, I will say, as both a victim of non-consensual explicit materials and as well as an advocate with the Sexual Violence Prevention Association, it was very upsetting. Quite a lot of things were cut of the two, different bills at the end between that draft that we saw on Tuesday versus what we finally got voted on Friday. And a number of things were cut, but I think this was one of the most upsetting for quite a lot of victims around the country. It's just very clear that Congress is sending a message that this is not something that they're prioritizing, nor is it something that they feel is as serious as it is. And so it was very alarming, and it was concerning considering, right at this point, digital forms of sexual violence, including what's formerly known as deepfake pornography and revenge pornography, these things are skyrocketing. And so we really needed action now. Victims needed action now. And unfortunately, because it was taken out, we still have no recourse. And there's really not much that victims across the country can do.
I mean, one of the bills would have required social media platforms, websites as well, to essentially have procedures, measures in place to remove an image within 48 hours of a valid request from a victim. Senator Ted Cruz spoke about it. He said that the fact that Elon Musk and Donald Trump own multi-billion-dollar social media companies had nothing to do with the fact that it was excluded. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I can't speak too much to exactly what that connection might be, but what I will say is that I don't think that was necessarily part of the decision in this case. I think this was really just that we were coming down to the last days, and I think the government was trying to avoid a shutdown. So as I mentioned, quite a lot of things were removed, not just this. But at the same time, I do think it is something that I think it is an indication that it's not being taken as seriously as it should be, but I'm not going to necessarily speak to a relationship that may be taking place between social media companies and those who control them, and the bill not getting through. But it is definitely something that I think could be considered.
So what happens then in the interim? Because as you've just mentioned, this technology continues to develop apace. I read an alarming statistic that, terms of these deepfake pornography videos online increased 460% compared to the year previously. So what happens now?
Unfortunately, as you mentioned, we are seeing exponential growth, right? Digital sexual violence, including revenge porn and deepfake porn, are just skyrocketing. And we're going to unfortunately continue to see that in the coming years until we have a law. And right now, what we really need is victims have no way to seek recourse. So we are going to continue to see people being deepfaked. Unfortunately, due to my advocacy on this issue, I was deepfaked, and it has happened a few times because there's no way for me to hold this perpetrator accountable. And we're going to continue to see that. We're going to continue to see victims across the country being deepfaked repeatedly, and just a number of perpetrators emboldened by these lack of legislation. And this is coming hot on the heels of a report by the American Sunshine Project that came out, I think, a week or two ago, stating that 26 members of Congress were also victims of deepfake pornography, most of them women, 25 of the 26 being women, and talking about how this is something that's going to continue to be used to try to silence and harm women and girls across the country. And unfortunately, we are going to continue to see that because we just don't have this legislation at that federal level, and we need legislation at the federal level. The state level is not enough. And so really, I think, unfortunately, we're going to see such a big increase in the coming year.
Omny Miranda Martone, CEO of the Sexual Violence Prevention Association, one of the groups backing that bill. Thank you so very much for being with us here on BBC News.
Thank you.